Historical Society from Oxford County Archives. Kind of preemptively, we didn't want it per se, but they mailed it to us anyway because we aren't a collecting institution. So it is a school photo and not from Strathroy Caradoc. We think maybe Lambton County, but if anybody recognizes it, we can try to find its home. If not, we'll send it back to Oxford. So it was Foster did the photography, and Bill, you did a bunch of research on him. So
yes, it's a picture by Charles Herbert Foster. Charles Herbert lived just south of Strathroy. So he was a local photographer, but he also had an office in London. So maybe that could even be Elgin County.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking maybe he did the local area, but maybe he did like a school in Elgin County or in Lobo. It's hard to say.
Yep. So if anybody recognizes it, we could put it on our Facebook page too to see if anybody recognizes it. Just because we don't really collect anything, we just can't really have it sitting around, so hopefully we can find a home for it.
So what I've brought today is this lovely wooden box, and in this is all the plans and quotes, I guess, for the work for the building of the farmhouse on my great-grandparents' farm. It actually was my great-great-grandparents' farm, and then his son took over. So my great-great-grandpa, I actually got a picture here, that was Duncan Ferguson. And they built this house. They started in 1887, and I have a picture of the finished home here in 1895. I have my mom here, just because I figured a lot of you guys would know my mom. This was, she was 20 in this picture. And this was taken in around 1965, and that's the family photo. So I did print two of these out just so two people could be looking, but basically my great-great-grandfather bought the farm, 29 acres on the back Hespeler Road near Galt, which is now Cambridge, and it's now known as the Franklin Boulevard, and it looks nothing like my memory of childhood, when we drove up to the farm and pulled in the lane and there's all the trees, and it's nothing like that. So yeah, so they decided to construct a white brick house, and the plans were built up. And I actually have the original, but there's photocopies, and I brought those just because I'm kind of freaky about my stuff. So there was a log cabin that was on the farm that existed, and they lived in that while the house was being built. And that log home, after my grandpa died and they sold the farm, my mom donated that log home to the Dune Pioneer Village. Like, they took it all apart, trucked it to the village, and they said they were going to try to get some Mennonite people to come in and help them put this thing back together. So the family were well known in the area as horsemen and breeders, and they raised beef, cattle, hogs, and sheep, and in the 1940s they switched to dairy. And Nellie, his wife Nellie, she was Helen, that's where my mom got her name. I heard about her my entire life, even though my mother herself never met her grandmother. She died before my mom was born, but I feel like she's like Superwoman because my mother's been always told me about her. So yeah, so when you come up, smaller pieces, these are the photocopies of the, I guess to be tenders, like it'd be the guy who says, I'm going to come and do the brickwork on your house, and I'm going to charge you this. And the interesting thing that I found, and I never knew, is they all expected board. They didn't work from home and come and do it. They moved into your house. All of them say this, so that must have been the way it was at the time. So I have these, and then I have the actual plans of the house. The house was still there. My grandpa sold the farm in 1966, and he sold it to the city of Cambridge, and they in turn sold some of the property to Sibagagi, and they came in and they built a plant, but they left the house. And then 5 years after they bought it, they renovated the house so they could use it as office spaces. So we were able to go in then, and that was kind of cool. The other thing I want to mention quickly too that I have, Crystal mentioned we don't collect things, but people do like to give us things. And Janet Humphrey, she contacted me probably in the fall, and she has written a book about her father-in-law's experience in World War II, Mac Humphrey. So, you know, maybe some of you remember Mac. I read this book. She's given it to our society, so it lives with me. But if anybody wanted to borrow this and read it, it's a very good read. It's a very easy read, and it's well done. I was really impressed with her interviewing skills to get the stories out of Mac. So, you know, this is available on loan.
My notes. Okay. First I brought in the key ring. It's actually 2 rings, 2 chains. One of the rings has 7 keys. We've got a tag, like it's a metal tag from it's got the name of Henry. It's got the name of Henry Gosselin, the carpenter from Bigger, Saskatchewan. So I don't know how it ended up here, but anyway, so that's the one key. All the keys are different. Okay, on the second key ring, yeah, they're all different keys. So some of them are kind of unusual. One of the keys, it's got the it's got the notches at the end of the key, not along the key. So when you press it in, it would push something. You know, and then you can turn. So anyway, that's and I think, see, 2 of the keys here, those are for a safety deposit box. Somewhere there's a safety deposit box in a bank with $1 million in it. If I can only find out where that box is, I can be a millionaire. Anyways, it's just an old set of keys. It actually came from somebody in Adelaide Township. You know, so it's been passed down through the family or whatever, and it just never got thrown out, which is what happens a lot of times. Okay. The second thing I brought is the wiring system in old homes was a knob and tube system. Okay. They had these porcelain, it's a porcelain tube. They drill holes, put this, and going through a 2x4, you would use one of these. Like as an insulator. They have tubes like this. These are like the knobs. You can run the wire on either side, and then you would clamp them together like that. Okay, so there are 34 pieces here. They got all various types of clamps. You know, like there's another one. It would have 2 wires running through, and then you would clamp it together and you would screw it together. So these are with the knob and tube system. You know, so that yeah. Here's another example of a couple of insulators. You could run a couple of wires through that. You see, and then you would like and screw it to the side of the 2x4, and in order to keep the wires away from the wood, because I think the wires got warm. You know, so you didn't want to. So anyway, it's a tube. Then like that's for a light bulb, a light fixture, and what else is here? Oh, I'm missing one. Okay. Yeah. I also have the book here called Moonfleet. When I was in high school, in grade 9, this is the book that was part of the English course. This was 1967-68. It's an adventure story. It's off the coast of England. There are pirates. There's treasures. There's a funeral. But anyways, yeah. So this was a book that was in Strathroy in the 1960s. When I saw it in a used bookstore, I I recognized it right away and I had to buy it. So yeah, so I bought it in Moonfleet. Okay. All this porcelain stuff, it came in this wooden box. It's something I found at the economy shop, and I don't know, it was about $4 or $5 or so. And, I brought in this book. Guess how old it is? It's got a leather cover. It's about sermons. It was about religion. It was published in 1818 in Glasgow, in Scotland. Somehow that book made it all the way here to Strathroy. It belonged to now it says here James Ferguson, okay, and then on the inside it's got an Alec Ferguson as well. So I don't know who these people are, but at some point this book ended up at the Mainly Books bookstore on Frank Street. And when that bookstore had to close down, and the guy gave Dave Brock a hand, and yeah, a lot of the books he just had to get rid of because they're old and so as I'm going through, I found this. I thought, well, I don't want to throw it away, but you know, it's got a price of $50 in it. But as everybody knows, you can put a price on something, but unless somebody wants to buy it, it's worthless. Anyways, yeah, that's an 1818 book. It's about religion. It's amazing how well the paper has lasted all these years. This is a book called The Herbalist. It's called The Complete Herbalist. It was published in 1875. Now, it's actually worth some money. You know, people are interested in buying this. If you if you go on eBay and you put in the title, you know, then you'll find people selling it. This book, in the back, it tells you who it's from. Charles H. Campbell, 408 Vernon Drive, Vancouver, BC, 1944. Now, I know who this is. This Charles Campbell, he was born, let me think now, as you're going down Hickory Drive, out of town, when you come to McAvoy Road, that corner farm was the Campbell farm, and this is where this guy was born. And at some point he ended up in Vancouver, but I think he's buried here locally. But anyway, so that's a book on herbalists and from 1875. And that's it. Okay, next. Any questions?
Bill, was that sermon book, is it in English?
Yes, it's in English. It's in English, yes. Any other questions?
Oh, yeah, that's gonna work. Okay. You will take note of the bag that I brought this in, I hope. Okay. So take note. Now, this is not an 18, I don't think, an 1818 thing. Anybody still have one of these around in the basement somewhere? One of these in the basement? Yeah, you know what that's for. Well, I have a sort of a connection to it. We had this on the farm, and it went to Byron with my mother and father and I when we moved to Byron from Caradoc in 1953. And what it was, why I have a remembrance, and I don't know why we've kept this so long. It was in her basement, and it went to our place, and it's just still around. It's for capping bottles. Okay, so my connection to it, now I don't know whether this was done for maybe in the past for during Prohibition when people made home brew and they had to cap the bottles, because This is a modern one. It's a Labatt Blue. It's in the brewing industry. Since I worked at Labatt's in the summers for 2 or 3 summers when I was going to school, these are not caps in the brewing industry. They're crowns. They're made by at that time they were made by a company called Crown Cork and Seal, but they're crowns. So anyway, my dad worked at Labatt's. He got a job at Labatt's, and my mother still made tomato juice. And my dad used to bring the empty tall bottles home. Not this is a wine bottle, I think, but I just brought it for demonstration. But she used to bring the tall, clear bottles home, along with their crowns, which were just brass colored, and she would make tomato juice. And then she'd ladle the tomato juice out of the big pan into the bottle, and then it was Brian's job to take the bottle and lift this up, go around this side, lift this up, and you would put the bottle under there, and I would put a cap on top, and then I would squeeze that down, and then it would seal, and I would keep doing that, and that's how we got tomato juice at our place. We had houses today don't have, well, we call them fruit cellars or root cellars. Modern homes don't have any of those, do they? I don't think. But we had one in Byron, and then we would store all the tomato juice and whatever else she had there in that. So that's what that's all about. It's just an old antique, and I don't know how old it is. It was repaired once. I think my dad probably fixed that at one time. But at any rate, that was for putting tops on bottles. And I wanted to get a plain beer bottle, so I went to the beer store. I said, I want you to give it. I was willing to give them the dime back for the bottle, if they gave me one. And they said, oh no, we can't give you a bottle. I said, why not? It's empty. Just give me an empty bottle. It's for I told them it's for demonstration, and I'm going to do a little presentation. Oh, well, we can't give it. I said, why not? And they said, oh, well, it might spread disease. I said, okay, keep your bottle. So this is one we had around our place, but you can imagine what it would have been like, I guess, just with a smaller beer bottle. And, I'll put that on there like that. Whoop. Throw the crown away. And so that's my only presentation about the... And we'll leave it like that. Okay? Any questions about that? You know all about those.
I know,
yeah.
My grandfather used to make beer and root beer in his.
And he probably had one of these.
He had one of those.
Yeah. Okay.
That's in the city, probably.
Oh wow. Right downtown. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen another one of these around. I mean, I'm sure everybody threw them out once they.
Well, once they got the screw tops.
Yeah, it all disappeared. So anyway, you can have a look at that.
I have a couple of items here that belong to my father. I was born in the Netherlands, in The Hague, and my father was a baker. These, what's that?
It's making cookies.
This is for making cookies. This is for making sugar bases or sugar animals. And so these are 2 forms, and they will be clamped together. And I remember my dad in the workshop having a ladle and a big one of those wooden thermometers, and it was in a kettle, but it was a round bottom, so he could mix it and stuff like that. And he would clamp these forms together, and he would pour the sugar in there, and then once they hardened and cooled down, he would take them apart. I've got a sample there of there. So these were all hand carved back in those days. Now my dad had this shop from 1941 to 1953 when we came to Canada. So he brought all his stuff with him. Now these are animals, but he also had, they were mostly done for Christmas ornaments or for giving out candy and stuff like that for Christmas and Easter. He also had metal forms in the shape of hearts that he would do. He also had forms in letters, and so you'd have the alphabet and whatever people wanted, like the chocolate letters that you have today, they were made out of sugar. So these are, I'm going to give these to my niece in Alberta. This is, how many has ever bought speculaas? Okay, this is a speculaas board, and that belonged to my father. Now I was thinking, I'm not sure if there's another side. This is the only side I have. If there is another side, it probably is just the one side. So he would make the speculaas in that, and now the shop that my mother and dad operated was called the Trifle House. It was on Koningsstraat or King Street in The Hague. And so I'm going to have a little mark on to signify who it was from, and I'm going to send it to my son in Australia. It's going to cost me $60 to send it. But anyway, he had a number of the letters for the sugar letters, and he, like when we came to Canada, he brought all this stuff over, and later on in life he gave it to a friend, and the friend, he put all the letters and he made it a part of a wall and stuff like that. And so, but my father, both my parents are passed away, so I have these things. My daughters don't want them. So this is going to go to my son. These are going to go to my niece in Alberta. Any questions? Oh, one thing. When we came to Canada, he was employed at a brickyard for a while, and then he got laid off just before Christmas. He decided to maybe make some of this stuff because he had all this stuff that brought with him. And the Canadian palate, it was too sweet. It was we could not figure that out because most of your icing on cakes here is all sugar. Where in the Netherlands and Europe, your icing is more creamy and stuff like that. So we could not figure that out. But anyway, these things are the only things that I have of that, and I thought that I'd bring it and show it. Okay? Thanks.
Medals.
Okay.
Now, I'm new to Strathroy, but this is from my grandfather, and these are his medals these first three medals are from the First World War. This is the 1914-15 Star. This is the General Service Medal issued in 1916, and this is the Victory Medal. Now, these two are from the Canadian government because he volunteered in 1939 to go overseas and fight the Nazis. He was too old. He had he had a piece of his shin. In his shin, he had like the size of a shilling, like a 50-cent piece, where it was all bone. It had not healed from being wounded in the war. Now, what's special is this one here, the 1914-15 Star, was issued to soldiers who had joined right originally. My grandfather was a reservist. He was over here. He went back and rejoined his regiment. And on the back of it, engraved, is his name, because this is a very special medal. It says you were in from the beginning. I didn't know when he went back, and when he actually did. But if he did, he wouldn't get. There's a special one for the Second Corps. My grandfather was in the First Corps, called the Mons Rosetta. And it goes here for anyone who served at Mons, which is the first conflict between the British and the Germans in World War I. And these are basically I survived medals. This is the Canadian Volunteers, because he volunteered for overseas service, and that's the Victory Medal from World War II for the Canadian or Canada. And that's all I can say. And I know he was badly wounded in 1915, at the very end of 1915. And he was lucky to be alive, even though he was badly wounded in the leg. He recovered. He could walk anyone when he was in his 70s. He could walk most people into the ground. But he was not considered fit for frontline service, so they put him in the labor corps, because then he would build trenches and that, and also serve as a reserve should there be a breakthrough. They put a lot of these guys who had been wounded. They were not considered fit, but they were still fit, so they put them there to help with the war effort. And you must remember, this is the First World War and everything like that. And Hood was there to have the actual Christmas truce in 1940, where at Christmas time, the troops in the trenches put down their rifles and went out in the middle of no man's land and played football against each other, or soccer. And they happened on the Eastern Front and on the Western Front. And the generals, of course, made sure that never happened again. Your enemy is supposed to be made into a vicious villain. And unfortunately, people you play soccer with are not vicious villains. So that's my history. And as I said, I was badly wounded in this, one of the worst battles, a really bad battle that was badly planned and executed. And he was in the first wave. He spent an entire day laying in a shell hole, and he couldn't even lift his head up because all they had was, they hadn't issued them with helmets yet. So he couldn't lift his head up or he'd be shot. So he's there all day, and at night he crawls, because remember his legs all ripped up, he crawls back to his own lines. So I'm very grateful that he survived, because I wouldn't be here. My dad wouldn't be here. And my dad joined the Air Force in the Second World War. Never went overseas. Just his age. So, the same with my wife's father as well. Also in the Air Force. But he had two brothers also in the Air Force who were actually overseas. So, and they're local London boys.
I warned you.
For those of you that rode your bike tonight, this won't apply to you. How many did ride their bike tonight? Too many? No. I fooled around with old cars for, I don't know, 75 years. And I started out with a 32 Ford, which I built into, in those days they called them hot rods. Nowadays they're street rods. But it didn't have a radio in it. So after a few years I acquired a 33 Ford, and it came with this radio. And I did a little bit of looking, and apparently 33 was the first year that Ford would supply you a radio, although it had to be installed at the dealer. They didn't make them factory installed. So this is out of a 33 Ford that I no longer have the car, but I got the radio. I guess that makes sense. What they did is this piece that you see shaped here is the same shape as the glove box in the car. So when the dealer was going to supply you with a radio, he'd take the door off your glove box and install the radio from up in behind. And it has a speaker. I think if you look closely, you'll see the word Ford on there. And away you went. Now in 33, the radio cost about $130. The car cost about $540. So they didn't sell a lot of them, I don't think. And I did write down the name of the radio manufacturer.
They started in 1930, a very limited basis. Grigsby Grunau, which sort of altered its name and got into Majestic, and then this is a Zenith. Zenith came out in 33, you could get them in your car. I looked into restoration, and there aren't a lot of people that restore old electric pieces, but there are people that do this, and the one that I looked at, in comparison to this, the labor to do the restoration was $2,700, and the parts were $300. Now the fellow that did the work guaranteed that it would be a good working radio at the time. I don't know how long his warranty was going to be. This, just a couple of things about this thing. You can see there's an aerial lead. What they did was sometimes they'd mount the aerial in the spare tire, because most of those cars had an externally mounted spare tire, and you were looking for insulation, so you could wrap a wire around the rubber tire, mounted either on the back of the car or in the fender. And some people put chicken wire in the roof of the car because the roofs were a fabric material, and you had to have something that again was a non-conductor. So I don't know what this old girl ever had originally, but I've never tried to power it up. I don't like the looks of smoke all that well, and I suspect that if you put power to it, it would let the smoke out from inside it. At any rate, that's about all I can tell you about this old radio. Never had a radio in that 32. I've had two 32s, but that one never had one. And I've never tried to power this up. When I traded that car for a truck, not sure how that's going to work out because I'm still working on the truck, and that was back about 1983, I think. But you can't hurry those projects. I would be curious to see it powered up briefly, just before the smoke starts to come out. Don't think it'll ever happen. 6-volt radio. Everything was 6-volt in those days. This has the original knobs, which are a bit odd because most times these things get either broken off or taken off, and they just disappear. Now there are companies that supply remanufactured. They don't look quite the same, but they're pretty close enough, usually. But this is, like me, they're just old knobs. Any questions?
Why the vacuum tube inside there?
Yes.
Vacuum, okay.
I'll get out of here quickly, but for those people that might be, I probably can't get the latch undone now. It's just like any old car, it doesn't want to work very well.
Okay, yeah. Nothing good.
Probably short and sweet. Inherited this from my grandfather's family, and he was born in 1878, the same year as the Little Bighorn. And that has some relevance because I'll read the note that my grandmother wrote. I believe it was my grandmother. This basket was made by Philip Schuyler, a native who lived in Oneida or Muncie Reserve. With a bit of knowledge, I'm pretty certain it was Oneida. Schuyler was a Six Nations name. In the winter, they built a cabin in the bush behind my great-grandfather Waters' farm, and it says East Williams Township. It was actually at the corner of Springbank Drive and Elm Tree. I don't know whether drive or road.
and they worked in the bush cutting trees for the handle factory in Strathroy. And the basket was given to my great-grandmother as a friendly gesture. We also have a large laundry basket made, and a large square basket made by, I assume, the same gentleman. And it may have been that they also provided the food for these gentlemen when they're out. I understand there was a couple of guys there. The basket itself is pretty nice looking, but I tried to give it to the Archaeological Museum of Wonderland, and they haven't replied back yet. And that was about 6 months ago. But that's it. There's a note in here if you'd like to read it. Yeah, my grandfather was 4 years old when they made this basket.
Okay.
Well,
No, here you know.
a lot of folks know me, but if you don't, my name's Jim Moore. I worked my life in that blacksmith shop downtown since I was a kid. So I bought a lot of stuff from the old shop. I'll just go over it quickly. Does anybody have a wild idea what that thing is? It's actually a ruler. It's 24 inches around there. And it works like this. But what it's called a traveler. And it's hung on the chimney in the shop since I was a kid. And what it's for, if you want the inside circumference of something, you run it around, mark it, and there's your inside circumference. If you want the outside circumference, you go around the outside. It's for measuring wagon wheels. You got to measure the outside of the wagon wheel, and then you measure the tire you're making, the steel tire you're making for it, and you have to measure on the inside so that when it's just right, it'll fit. It'll be shrunk on. So that was called a traveler, and you can have a look at it later. I got out the old catalog. Bill was impressed with this, but this catalog was in the desk at the shop, and it's James Cowan, Blacksmith Supplies, 1914. And the Traveler is in the book, $2. So that book would be in the shop as long as I can remember, long before that. And James Cowan, you know that little vacuum cleaner store that's down by the arena? James Cowan company in London built that. Automotive supplies, mufflers, engines, just about anything like that. And James Cowan, it was about 1960 it started, because Jerry Bender was one of the first ones to run it. And James Cowan sold out to UAP. When they switched from Blacksmith Supplies, they switched to automotive. Then it became UAP, and now it's Napa Auto Parts. So everything in there, from buggy parts to hammers, nails, and just about anything you could think of. I'll leave it up here. You might want to have a look at it.
A number of the items in that book are actually in the shop now.
Oh yeah.
A couple of machines, machines, and it's very impressive.
Yeah, there's some of it we still use because it's handy. This thing was on the door of the shop. About 1960, the shop door was quite narrow, like that. Just a little narrow, two doors that opened. You get a buggy through it, I suppose. But I remember Dad getting cars in it when cars weren't so big, and you had to be damn careful or you'd be touching both sides. So in 1960, they tore the gable out and put a 9-foot rolling door in it. And most people could get through that, although I remember a few of them that didn't. And on the back of those doors was this thing on the old wooden doors, and it's Montreal Rolling Mills. That's who made the horseshoes. And it was nailed on the door, and I never noticed it for years because there were so many things nailed on top of it. Auction sales, sale bills, notices. And when Dad was getting rid of the old doors, he saved this, and it was in our shop in the back room for a long time. And that's why there's so many nail holes in it. And I washed it up, and it was still intact, and it also had some signatures with lead pencil. And I don't know why, but there's the old boy that started it up, or he didn't start it. First one in our family, 1904, because the shop was old then. But that's Rye Moore, and there's his signature. Rye Moore, Strathroy, Ontario. And underneath it says Duncan A. McLean and William Skinner. Well, they were farmers out on the 9th of Caradoc, right near the Lobo Town line. In fact, William Skinner, I don't know anybody knows young Doug Skinner, was out the last farmer on that farm. That's his great grandfather. And the other McLean was, there's two old fellows that were bachelors that farmed out there. There's a horse farm on the 9th now, right at the 401. Duncan McLean and Ken and Clarence, that was the old boys that were there. So that thing's old. And anybody wants to have a look at it, the story's on the back. This picture was taken, Ken Dunsmore come to me one day, and he had a little slide, a 35 millimeter, and he says, I think it was his aunt, was Mrs. Wallace, I forget. Anyways, she had gone around taking slides of everything in Strathroy, and it was only a little thing. And I asked Avery College if he could make a big picture out of it, and he said, yeah, those little slides are just 100%. So that came from about a 2-inch one. So that was the old shop. Lou Ballantyne ran the city service gas station there. Do you remember him? And Joe Tour had it when it burnt down in 75. And I always tried to date this picture, and Ken told me that was his aunt's car. Well, that old aunt of his, she bought Dr. Bynes' DeSoto when he would buy a new DeSoto. That's about a 54, so that's the one he had before he got the 58 or 59. I remember that. So I'm saying it was either a Sunday or Monday holiday, because everything's closed. Otherwise, everything would have been open. It's about 10 in the morning, and it's either Thanksgiving Monday or some early October, because the leaves have lost their trees. Their trees have lost their leaves. Anyway, that one's about 65 years old. This one's 100 years old. That was the shop in 1925. And this fellow here is in the picture. And these people journeyed from Chicago. It's Rye's sister and brother. They came from Chicago in 1925, and those cars, there'd be nothing but gravel roads, I suppose, 100 years ago right there. And that one's a Model T. And my son Russ got a book out, or phone out, and we thought it was a Packard by the look of the radiator. So it turned out, as near as we could date, it was about a 23 Packard Twin 6, they called it. So that was a big car, but the Model T, that's long ago. Chicago and a Model T is a long ways. Anyways, I'll leave it out if you folks want to look at it. I guess Bill got all this stuff out. Oh. I knew what it was. Where'd you get this, Bill?
That was the nominee.
You know what it is?
No, it was a box that.
Welding compound.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay.
We used to have it at the shop.
Right.
What it is for a fire weld, you get your two pieces hot, welding temperature, and this is borax and I don't know what all is in it, and it's a flux. So you get your two pieces hot and sprinkle that stuff back on there, put it back in the forge, and then bring it out, put it together, and bang, bang, fire weld. I used to watch my granddad do it.
Yeah, the name on the back of the anti-borax.
That's right.
A compound company in Windsor, Ontario.
Yeah. Now that one wasn't around the forge too much because it's not all burned up.
Oh.
The one
all these parts were in that box. That's where
the one my granddad had, the sides were all burnt down and scalds because he'd laid the hot iron over the box and dipped some on it, and the box is all burned off. Like, thank you.
Murray and Morris Brothers sold Ford cars over there before that.
Well, my name's Colin McKay Timmermans, born and raised in Strathroy. My mom and dad are at the back, Willie and Ann Timmermans. So what you have here is a poster from the dispatch, not the Age dispatch, but the dispatch, that was found in an attic in between. So it's on Catesville, in between Melbourne Road and Curwood Road, just before it goes to Churchill. So two of the posters were found in the attic. The farm that it was on was owned by a Thus. And so basically this is Prince Rupin. He came from France. He was born in 1909. When he came here, he was 14 years old. He's 1,900 pounds, 16 hands high. And it says it should produce a grand stock. So basically, there's a Monday to Saturday event for Prince Rupin to go to your farm to meet your mayor, I guess. So there's lots of names on here that are still around today, like Denning, Bennett, MacArthur, Patterson, McCallum, Corbett. So basically it costs you $15, and it was in the summer, I think it's the winter of 1921. So yeah, basically so Monday to Saturday, this is where he'll be. There's also towns in Somoza, which is southwest of Ontario, or Strathroy, kind of near, what's the name? Starts with a G. Yes. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. But so Cairngorm. So basically, I think so. Where this was found, Cairngorm at Cecil Dennings, which is Basil Dennings, which started Denning Funeral Home. That was his brother. I think that's the closest spot where they were, where the poster would have been hung up or something like that. Yeah.
So the horse has to work from Monday to Saturday, but he got Sunday off.
Yeah, that's the Lord's Day, right?
Today is ready for next week.
Yeah.
What was the other poster? You said there were two posters.
The exact same.
Okay.
That exact same poster. And there was a bunch of other stuff. I guess the house was pretty in shambles, so just a yellow brick house. I guess so. One of the Thusses has a pig farm there now, so I'm not. So who found it was a gentleman named Mike Beans. They're from Naboo there, just outside of Curwood. So him and his friend knew the owner. I think it was, I forget what bus it was, but so they asked to go up into the attic, and there was a bunch of papers and all that kind of stuff. So he's moved out out east, and been good friends with him for a long time. So he knew I really enjoyed history and Strathroy and all that kind of stuff. So he lended it to me until he comes back, I guess. So, but yeah, thank you.
So I have this, some of you probably knew my husband Vaughn. He was very much into history, especially Strathroy history. And so he put this together. I'm not sure how he did it, but anyways, it's 3 pieces that he put together, pages rather, and laminated it. And it's a list of all of the people in the armed forces that returned after World War II to Strathroy. It was a welcome home day on Thursday, September 20th, 1945. So they're all listed here, plus the program for the day. And as I said, I don't even know if he typed all this or he got it from somewhere.
It was that's a page on the age, on the age dispatch newspaper.
But it wouldn't have looked like that, I don't think.
No, but you know.
Yeah, yeah. It was from the Age Dispatch, page 3, September 13th, 1945, and yeah. So he put that together, and I thought if anybody wanted to look, you might recognize some of the names on it. And then I also saw this, and I think this was just kind of a generic thing that was produced. It has a picture of a Mountie on a horse in Strathroy. So they would just put the name of the town on it, I guess. But anyways, it's really old. And then I found this too, which is really, really old, extremely old. I don't know where it came from exactly. It says Canadian Banker. It's a self-inking stamp pad. And it's just really almost falling apart, but it's what they used in the banks, stamps, but it's extremely old. Anyway, I just thought I'd put that there.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. One of the reasons why we have show and tell in January, because there's always freezing rain, or there's a blizzard, or a storm, or it's too cold, so we decided we don't want to bring in a speaker from Wallaceburg or from London who's got to travel all, that people have to risk their life in order to get here. So that's why we decided, okay, January, we'll always have a show and tell meeting. And it's always a fun event. So yeah, unless anybody has anything more, you're all welcome to come up and have a look at these things. Are there any questions? No? Okay. Come have a look.
Smoking. Well, yeah, like you said, if you got the dust out of it, that's the problem. It's all dusty in there, you know.
I just wasn't spending $3,000 to get it rebuilt.
So I do what?
It came with the car.
So you took it out as something unique.
I remember the service station next to this.
Between that and
His daughter said for these 6 months ago.
I'll be putting some of these pictures on Facebook, and I'd like to have a name for whoever has got this thing. So yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, as I said, they're basically I survived.
And went to that movie. I love it.
My wife says I've been before going
That is I've got something.
I just got a couple. Odd looking little thing when I first got it.